Hi there, and thank you for watching and wanting more. This show is about more. Our guests have all been people who have achieved some kind of more in their lives without having to sell all their earthly possessions or move to a remote village. They have managed to find more for themselves even after these moments of introspection. Work is a really interesting place to try to ask someone to find more. We work for lots of reasons, even in pursuit of more, and yet I see all the time in my work with senior executives how their pursuit of more is often intellectual. And that is okay, just as long as it doesn't stop there and the journey for more continues. It is at this moment when we ask ourselves generally, though, like, what is more? And the objective of this show is to assist you in answering that question for yourself. Joining us today to give us his take is Mark Cohon, a dynamic businessman, an experienced sports executive, and the commissioner of the CFL. Now entering into his second term year at the helm of the CFL, Mark is leading the league through a period of positive growth. He joins us today as a person who believes in more. Mark, thank you for taking the time to join us.
Great to be here. Excited.
So I have learned from chatting with you, Mark, that you are not afraid of challenges. And I sense, in fact, that you seek them, not to promote yourself, but to further your pursuit for truth.
I agree. I mean, I like challenges. One of the issues is I'm one of those persons that gets a little bored if I'm doing one thing too much. So I like to seek new things, and I think part of life is having new experiences and growing yourself.
Good answer. So far, this is good. This will be a good interview, Mark.
Good. Thank you.
So knowing that, I want to even go even more real than that.
Okay.
So the fact is, we all want more of something. No matter who you are in this world, we all want more of something in our lives. If I asked you what you wanted more of, could you answer? More importantly, would you answer for us?
Yeah, I'll answer. I mean, I think it's different phases. If you asked me when I was 30 what would I want more of, it's probably different than now that I'm 42.
So at 42, what do you want more of?
You know, I probably want more time with my wife and my little 2.5-year-old. It's really true, and I want time with them as she grows. It's pretty a simple request, but when I was 30, I would want more time with my friends and going out at night and partying and meeting girls, and that's what I want more of. But I think now your life changes and you prioritize things differently. As my career goes, I'm pretty happy where the career is right now.
And so your pursuit for more, how are you kind of blending that within your career? How are you finding more within the career aspect of you?
Well, it's interesting because I've had the chance to be reflective on my careers over different points in my life. I actually think that you should take about every 5 years, try and take like a mini sabbatical if you can. And I did that. I did that. When I worked at the National Basketball Association at the end of my time at the NBA. I then went and I took a little bit of time off and I went and worked for this internet company. When we sold that company, I said, you know what, I'm going through a life change now. I was about 35 years old, 34, and I said, I really want to take a break. And I went to Sumatra and I studied wild orangutans with a scientist for about a month in the rainforest. And I got a time to really reflect. And I think you need to really think about your career where you're having fun at the same time. For me, it's about waking up every morning and going in and having fun. And if I'm not having fun, then it's time to look for something else. Wow,
that's a great, I guess, secret or recipe or criterion to have for your life. You've had a very exciting career, and it's been so illustrious in a lot of ways. You've been an executive within the Major League Baseball. You've been recruited by NBA's David Stern, and you served as, amongst other things, the managing director of NBA Europe. It's pretty exciting. How does that kind of work satisfy your need for more at that stage of that journey? What was it fulfilling?
Well, it was interesting. I mean, I think the interesting thing about sport and what I love about sport, and I learned this, because any job, whether you're selling a can of Coca-Cola or a widget in a factory, do you enjoy the work? Do you enjoy what you do? But for me, the most interesting thing is when I was with Dikembe Mutombo. Dikembe Mutombo is an African basketball player. He's from, I believe, Zaire. He's been a player in the NBA for years and years. When I was running NBA Europe, I took Dikembe to South Africa. And we went into Soweto and the townships in Cape Town and both Durban and in Johannesburg. And I realized the power of sport when I was with him, because we go into these little tin shacks of these kids and these families who were living on $2 a day. And he would come in and you go inside and the wallpaper was pictures of Dikembe from magazines and newspapers. I mean, these kids decorated their house. And the power of sport to give these guys inspiration and a hope That's why I like what I do, because I think the power of sport can bring people together, and I really learned that with Dikembe.
Wow, and actually a lot of your experiences, that's kind of been an underlying theme.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think you have to think about, it's interesting, before I became the commissioner of the CFL, I was running the software company, and I was building this rapidly growing software company in the sports ticketing space, and I didn't really enjoy it. I mean, it was amazing. I worked there for 3 years. I was recruited as their CEO. I built it from 3 clients to 75 clients, rapidly growing really fast. Our little girl was on the way, and I said, you know what, I'm not having fun with my job. I quit, actually. I just said, time to take off. I took a year off when our little girl was born. And it was at that time, if you're talking about more, that I want to reflect and see what makes me happy. And that's how I got back into sports, and that's how I got back into the CFL.
Wow, that's so great, Mark, and good for you. I love that for you.
Thank you.
It takes a lot of courage. See, I knew that. I sense that you understood what it means and feels like to look for more. But I'm curious of how this awareness impacts how you be now.
I think you just got to be more truthful and open, and it's not about just being an open book. I mean, it's hard in my job sometimes, because when you're the face of the league, you got to be careful about how you answer things sometimes. But one of the things that the media has said to me about why I'm resonating with fans and also with the media is the fact that I am pretty much an open book, and I try and tell them as much as I can. So when I think about this job that I have, I love it because it's important to the country. So if you talk about the CFL, one of the things I learned by traveling across this country is how important the CFL is to the fabric of our nation. I was never prouder to be a Canadian. And I've backpacked through Europe with the Canadian flag on my backpack, when I was 18 and 19 years old. But I was never prouder to be a Canadian when I stood at Rogers Centre here during the national anthem and sang the national anthem with 53 other thousand Canadians, and the emotion I felt, I was proud to be a Canadian, and I think that is what gets me up every morning and say I'm doing something that's bigger than me, and it's something that's for this country. And I'm not interested in going for politics, I tell you that. But, I'm definitely not. But I'm just saying it's just something that was just bigger than me, which is interesting.
Well, it is interesting because I want to get a little more sense of those things that really move you and how those values kind of show up in your life in other areas. We're going to have a quick break, guys. We invite you back for more with Mark Cohon, who's Commissioner of the Canadian Football League. Stay with us. Welcome back to More, and thanks for joining us. I'm Sheba Varghese, and with me today is Mark Cohon, Commissioner of the Canadian Football League. Appreciate you being here, Mark.
Thank you. It's great being here.
And you may notice that I actually owe Mark an apology. It's not Mark Cohon, it's Mark Cohon. So Mark Cohon is left, and in his place we have Mark Cohon.
The real Mark Cohon.
The real Mark.
Please,
so
now I'll really open. Now you'll get more. Now you get more.
I guess that's true. That's interesting. There's a lot of prerequisites for more. Let's talk about some of yours. You've had a very privileged life in lots of ways, Mark. Tell me about how your own sense of more has been shaped by others.
Interesting. I mean, you talk about being a privileged life. Yeah, this is kind of a business show, and it's about more as well. I was fortunate to grow up in a family, a successful dad, a successful mom. My dad was the founder of McDonald's in Canada. So I lived a great lifestyle growing up. But what I learned from my dad, you didn't ask me, but really influenced my dad and my mom in many ways is, be yourself. Treat everyone with respect. It's not like I'm not listing the 10 Commandments here, but treat everyone with respect. Treat everyone the same way. It's interesting. My dad's been wildly successful. He'll talk to the guy cleaning up the restaurant the same way he'll talk to the Prime Minister, and I really learned that from him. But the same way, I think in my own DNA, it goes back to my great-grandfather who came over from Russia to the United States, actually. They lived in Chicago and lived in a neighborhood that was ethnically diverse. And when they got a little bit of success and he opened up his bakery, he helped inner-city kids who had trouble. And I think that goes to the heart of who my family is and what we're all about. And I think that's, helps me think a little bit about more.
Yeah, it definitely has shaped your life and influenced how you choose to be now. Has it always been the case?
I think it has been. I mean, I'm involved. I'm chairman of the Ontario Science Centre. I've been involved with a lot of different charities and that. But this goes back to when I was a little kid, I think. When I I was a zookeeper at the Toronto Zoo because I loved animals. You know, I led this expedition in the Arctic after university rather than getting a job because I had this real interest in the outdoors and wilderness. And I've been on the board of so many different charities, but I like things that I can get my hands dirty. It's not about going to a gala and being, you know, out with your friends. I mean, that's fun, but it's really about doing, you know, getting your hands dirty and being a part of a community.
Now, so you've talked about some things that you clearly have taken the path of the road less traveled, if you will. And you also shared with me about some times where being true to yourself wasn't always necessarily so easy. It wasn't wasn't such an automatic given that's right away you would focus on you first. So kind of, can you tell me how do you find that comes as a challenge for an individual who's striving for more, but is also hardwired and bent to think of others first? How do you find your more?
Well, I think you get more. I mean, it depends on your DNA and your makeup, but you know, maybe for me, part of my more, whatever you want to put that in quotes, comes from doing the things that I do. Right, and part of what I do is I like this job. It's really interesting. I think people sometimes segment their jobs. You know, you spend most of your time at work, and they do the work, and then they do the things they like to do after work.
Sure.
What I'm doing right now is I'm doing the things I like to do during work.
Good for you.
And that's the fun part of what I'm doing, and I think that's really important. And if you can find that marriage, I think it's really important. I saw my dad did that. But the interesting thing about my father, which is interesting, is that, you know, he built a very successful company, but he used it as a platform to do good, as opposed to, it's not just about selling a Big Mac and a fries and a Coke. It was really about doing stuff in the community. And that wasn't about this, you know, the rhetoric of giving back or anything. It was just about, I think, who he was, and that's why I had a great mentor. I have a great mentor in him.
That's wonderful. When you think of more, when you think of business, I mean, yes, your dad was a wonderful example of somebody who kind of did it. What do you think? What drives a person to operate in that kind of way? Yes, you're talking about your historical reference points and what you grew to see, but what is it about at that point when you work, when you exist, when you be? What is it? What do you do it all for, Mark?
At the end of the day, I think you do it for family. I mean, I think you do it in a lot of ways for. It depends what type of lifestyle you want to have. You know, do you want to have a big house? Do you want to have a nicer car? But I think at the end of the day, when I think about the conversations around the dinner table, it was really, you know, the work or what he did was in the community, but was really about setting an example for the kids he wanted to raise and for the grandkids. And we even talked about that today in terms of, you know, after this show, I'm going out to dinner with my niece and nephew who are 9 and 7, who are in from England visiting, and a lot of things we talk about is what was passed on to me is, you know, my parents are trying to pass it on to their grandkids as well.
What are the must-have values that you allow for yourself?
Must-have values. Interesting. I think it's, you know, be humble, have fun, be truthful, and you know, family. I don't know if that's a value, but you know, the importance of family I think is pretty critical. Like I find as I get older, I brush away things or people that I don't mean to be flippant about it. You brush away things that aren't as important to you, and then you spend time with people you really want to spend time with. It's about experiences too. It's not about acquiring things. It's about having great experiences.
You know, you said that when you were in your 20s, you would have answered it differently. When you were in your 30s, you would have answered it differently. And now you're here. What have you kind of realized about yourself through that evolution? As it relates to finding your more.
Yeah.
Right? That's a pretty big question, but I mean in terms of, did values drop off as new ones came on board? You talked about family, obviously there's one. But in terms of the things that drove you, how is that, have those always still kind of shown up in your life? Have they always been the same drivers, Mark?
I think they probably change over time. It's really interesting. Like you talk about acquiring things. I think we're in a bit of a culture of acquisition, and maybe that, I wouldn't say there's Western culture that is about consumption. And I always thought, you know what, do I want a cottage? Do I not want a cottage? Like my friends have a cottage. And I always said, no, I'm not going to get one. And recently, since the birth of my child, our little girl, we decided the other day to actually buy a cottage Because it's about the experiences. And I remember when I was a kid, we had a farm that we spent a lot of time with as a family. It was a time for the family to bond, to get away. And part of, for me, I think the relaxation and connecting with something a little bit deeper is when you're away, when you're out of the city, when you're in wilderness. If you ask a lot of people when they feel the most connected, it's when they're out of an urban landscape. I feel that a little bit, and I'm really excited about this opportunity because it's about creating experiences for my family.
How do you be vigilant for Mark? You're very other-centered, and that's wonderful. Yeah. And at the same time, you were born Mark Cohon versus Cohen.
Right.
And so I'm curious, how do you be vigilant for you?
For me, I mean, I think it's just doing the things that you enjoy doing. So I really love my job now. When I talked about my previous job, the CEO of the software company, I didn't have fun, and I don't think I was being true to Mark. I might have been true to, hey, I have to be a CEO of a company, and I got to run this business, and I got to do a good job. Well, I became a 40 under 40 in Canada because of the job I did on that company. But the fact of the matter is that wasn't being true to me because I wasn't having fun. So when I stepped back from it and really reflected, I'm now in a place that I'm having fun and doing something that I think is important.
Congratulations, that's great. Let's take another short break. Please stay with us for more. We'll be back. Hi again, you are still watching More, and we're here with Mark Cohon in his second term as Commissioner of the Canadian Football League. Mark, what are the suggestions that you'd have for those of us like you who are courageous enough to pursue something that they don't have to pursue?
I think about why you want to do it. I think about where you are in your life at this point, whether you're happy, whether you're fulfilled, whether you're waking up every morning and saying, hey, I'm enjoying what I'm doing, whether it's working or volunteering or the family situation that you're in, and analyze that. It was interesting. I went through this phase in my life where I actually, when I was thinking about some changes, so I was working for the software, for this company out in San Francisco. We sold the business to a big retailer. That's the time where I said in the interview I took some time off and went to Sumatra and worked in the wild with wild orangutans. During that time, and they're a lot easier than people, I tell you that. During that time, I actually journaled every day. And there were themes that came out about what's important to me. And part of it, I think if people want to go through introspection, I think journaling is a really good way of doing it. Sit down at the end of the day and think about what did you do, what do you enjoy, what didn't you like. Think about different points in your life. And then see what some themes that come out of it. And I think that could be a handy way of thinking about if you want to tackle the next challenge and whether it is appropriate for you where you are in your life at this point.
What about you from the journaling side on an ongoing basis? I mean, that's great that things are wonderful and good. Yeah. I'm curious, how do you kind of keep yourself in growth mode?
It's interesting. I think now with my career, with my work, I think I'm in growth mode because I'm really learning. If I was getting to a point in this job right now, job, career, whatever you want to call it, where I wasn't learning, then I would probably step back and say, where am I? Am I getting what I need in this role? But clearly, right now, it's not that I'm too busy. I'm really finding that I'm learning every day on the job. I'm finding new things. I'm getting new challenges. I'm traveling this country. I'm getting to know Canada. My previous career was outside this country. Like all my working career was almost outside of Canada. I've worked in 30 different countries around the world. So what I'm having fun with this is really getting to know the country as well.
And so I had a thought and I lost it, which is unfortunate because it was a good one. But it was really around just this whole idea of intentionality, and you're an intentional kind of person. And so when you think of being intentional, where are you most directing that?
Well, I think I was intentional in some things in my life, whether that was how I handled a personal situation or whether I decided when I was running the last business to take time off at the birth of our daughter to really reflect. But I also think there is opportunities, and I talk a lot about this. It's about, this is not the carpe diem and the cliche of that, but there's a lot to do with luck. As well. And I think you have to look at opportunities when they come across and seize them. So, for example, I work for Major League Baseball. one of the most powerful guys in sport is a guy named David Stern. He's the commissioner of the NBA, the National Basketball Association, most revered commissioner out there. I was a young kid working for Major League Baseball. I was in Japan at the airport in Tokyo, the Narita airport. He walks into the first class lounge. I'm there. There's no one else there. I seize the opportunity to go talk to him. I end up getting a job and working for him for 7 years, and he became one of my mentors. So I think, you know, there's you can be intentional with things, but you also have to, when those opportunities come, make sure you seize them.
And I'm sure it has a lot to do with your value around adventure. I mean, you've lived a very adventurous life. You've tried things that most people haven't tried, and you have the courage to do that.
Yeah, I think you have to do that. I don't have my bucket list that I check off in terms of what I want to do.
Oh, sure. I bet you do somewhere.
I just went on a speedboat the other day, went 130 miles an hour. That was fun. That was a little scary, though. But
anybody fall out?
No one fell out because you wouldn't have survived it. But I do have other things. Like at some point, my older brother and I, we like adventure. So we were talking about climbing Mount Kilimanjaro at a certain point. But we just, I love to scuba dive. I won't parachute anymore or do anything of those opportunities. But I still like that outdoor adventure, which I think gives you the opportunity to connect with yourself.
How often do you feel that you're connecting with people? Just because you're such a different person in terms of being in touch with who you are and living that out. And inevitably that kind of raises your standards, I would assume, for the types of people you want to be interacting with.
Well, it depends. I mean, in my job as a commissioner, I'm connecting with people every day. I love the part I love about my job the most is when I'm going to the stadium and sitting in the stands and talking to our fans, because that's the most. Because those are the real people in this world. You know, it's the people that are coming to our ballpark, and they're not getting caught up in whether they're culturally involved in something or what they are. I mean, those are our fans, and those are the people that I really enjoy being with.
Wow. So, I'm actually awestruck, Mark, and so it's good. So tell me a little bit about what you've experienced when you think of more, and how you see that kind of playing out around you in terms of other people. How do you get it?
Listen, I don't get it. I mean, I get pieces of it, and I think.
But that's still so much more than the average person. And so, what drives you to want to get it and keep getting it and keep going?
Well, I think now I'm more motivated by, in the same way my parents were motivated to, create a lifestyle or a culture within our own family. I think what motivates me is about, my wife and my little girl, and creating an environment for her that is a similar type of environment that I grew up in. Not in terms of houses or cars or schooling or that. It's more of the experiences. So, one of the things I really appreciate from my parents, at a very young age, they were able to take us traveling around the world before the world changed. We went to Russia 30 years ago. Went to China, went to places that were South Africa, and it was really interesting to see those places. I really want to give my little girl those experiences as well. How
do you think they shaped your whole appreciation of more?
What it made me do is at a point leave Canada. I decided at a point to go and have my international career, work around the world, and then as I got a little bit older, I said, you know what? There's great values in this country. I want to come back.
Well, you guys, life is a numbers game. I know it, I believe it, I see it, and I feel it. And most just let that play out. And thankfully, there are people like you, Mark, who make their own demands clear and go deeper inside their being. So thank you for taking the time to be with us and be so open.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Well, that's our time for today with Mark Cohon. Mark, thank you for taking the time to come in and speak with us. Your willingness to share and be open and honest is amazing. And it's what makes you such a great guest. It's so simple, this pursuit. If you just trust and know that all you need in order to realize you're more in business and finances and love and life is self-awareness. Of course, there's more to it from there, and it does come with its challenges and moments of fear, self-doubt, and choice, but nothing worth having in life comes without effort. So let that be the question you ask yourselves from this moment forward. Are you willing to make the effort for more? Emerson sought more, and he knew we would be challenged by it as a pursuit. He advised us to find strength in knowing that the world is all gates, all opportunities, strings of tension waiting to be struck. So what is effort that brings you the greatest personal feeling of joy? Allow yourself to be with whatever that is, and then live in integrity to that. Please know that you're invited back each week to join us in our journey towards more. Next week, we'll be speaking with, we'll be taking a break, and we'll join you again the following week with Dr. Sherry Cooper. Until then, if you have any thoughts, ideas, or questions, please contact us via our blog. Thanks for joining us, and remember, in all that you do, do it for truth.